The 2014 Ebola outbreak in West Africa affected Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. In Guinea, there were 3,814 total cases, with 2,544 total deaths. In Sierra Leone, there were 14,124 total cases and 3,956 total deaths. Liberia, 10,678. Total deaths, 4,810. The overall total deaths for all three countries was 11,310.
Yesterday, it's increasing. For now, the death rate still increasing, it's not reducing. Our own Liberian brothers are dying. We are not happy of that. But it's matter of fact that we just have to do it to get the body out of the community and get the body out of the street. Because if we not do it, the virus will keep to be extended in Liberia. Maybe some of us to our level will be involved.
Ebola is an infectious and generally fatal disease marked by fever and severe internal bleeding spread through contact by infected body fluids. The First World Curriculum of Ebola Safety Procedures disrupts traditional funeral rituals in West African countries with the assumption that cremation is normal or translatable.
Before we can pick up the body, we always do a social worker work. And for me, I always do a social worker work. I will first of all call the people, introduce our title, the eminence of Red Cross, talk to them at Red Cross is here to pick up the body, and the people can be convinced before we can get the body out of the hospital, before carrying it to the cremation site.
There is a widely supported anthropological theory that death can be a rite of passage. Arnold van Gennep first introduced his main argument in 1960, that death consists of three fundamental parts: separation, transition, and incorporation. He also identifies a vital transitional period he calls the liminal period, which reinforces the idea of ritual as a process. Death as a rite of passage. Step 1. Separation of the spirits of dead people from their bodies as well as their social obligations. Step 2. Transition of spirit, where it is no longer a member of the community of the living, but is also not part of the community of the dead. It is during this liminal period that many cultures believe that the body and soul is most vulnerable. Step 3. Incorporation may vary. One could reunite their spirit with nature, or be welcomed into their ancestral home, or ultimately be reborn. Before discussing how the death rituals in these three countries can affect the impact of Ebola, it's also important to note how they treat those who are sick. So this includes personal care by relatives such as wiping, massaging, kissing, and embracing. After the person dies, the bodily contact continues as bereaved people come by to express their grief and offer condolences. The body is wrapped in a shroud, mat, or a coffin and placed in the ground by several people where more contamination is possible. To tie in Schwader's First World Curriculum and Normal Body section, I believe one point is clear. Education and attitudes will not always be in line with each other. Sometimes health education needs to bend to the will of the community's attitudes. Adjusting the cultural rituals can lead to people being forthcoming on their activities. Less people hiding the bodies of their dead loved ones for fear of having them cremated, and less people continuing funeral rituals despite health risks. All in all, it is important to go one step beyond listening and learn to adapt health education to respect cultural beliefs and traditions. So now what? I believe a good first step is safe burials. The World Health Organization believes that safe burials will allow family to become involved with the body of the deceased, ensuring that the grave is appropriately labeled and allowing religious leaders to offer prayers and family members the option to throw the first soil, all of which are important incentives for encouraging families to continue to find strength in their faith and to keep other family members safe from becoming infected. Also, it is important to adapt the advice of medical anthropologists. This is important because their research into cultural significance and values of burial practice can help the affected areas find safe alternatives. Misunderstanding, I do not object to the Ebola response protocol, although I do find cremation to be a harsh approach. I see the importance of preventing further deaths. As it is, death and how people view funeral practices are universally different due to cultural and religious beliefs. It simply must be reiterated that it is important to avoid the parent-child dichotomy that often happens between the first world and the third world. The subtle we know best rhetoric towards third world countries as children is counterproductive towards progress of a world free of poverty, and full access to health care. If you do not respect what I believe, how can I believe and trust what you are trying to teach me?